soul, not at rest, trapped between worlds, consumed by darkness, not demons, not cartoons, but the weight of unwashed sins and promises. She was human once. She lived, she loved, she swore oaths, and she died without settling her past. Death brought her no peace. Instead, it left a thread, a fragile, pulling her back into the world of the living. This is not just a ghost in the fog. This is a soul that sticks. A soul searching for flesh, to breathe, to finish what was left undone, or to take revenge for what was stolen. The victim never invited her. The body is just a doorway, cracked open at the worst possible moment. Possession begins quietly. A rustle under the pillow, a foreign breath in the mirror, a word spoken that no one said. This is not a fairy tale, not an urban legend. It is written in ancient chronicles, whispered in the Kabbalah, born of a soul's desperate need to find shelter. And once the Dybbuk finds a body, the nightmare begins. Relentless. One soul did not find peace. She came back, and she needs a body.
London, a city where millions of stories begin. In the subway, in parks, and in old pubs. Angelina Sidorova is 21. She came from Moscow to study art at Central St. Martin's. She lives in a tiny room in Bloomsbury, dreaming of galleries and exhibitions. David Clark is 26, an analyst at J.P. Morgan's London office. His world is numbers, charts until midnight, and rare weekends off. Two different worlds, two parallels that were never meant to cross, until one evening changed everything. That Thursday, Angelina had just defended a complex project. Let's celebrate at O'Donoghue's, her friend Sarah suggested. This pub, with its stained glass windows and live music, was their favorite. David, meanwhile, had just finished closing the quarterly report. "I'll have just one drink and then sleep," he promised himself, stepping into the same pub by chance. His usual bar was closed for renovations. She was glowing with happiness. He leaned against the bar, weary. Only a meter apart. Angelina ordered the signature cocktail, Electric Blue Lagoon. When the bartender placed the glowing glass before her, David couldn't help but smile.
Looks dangerous.
Looks dangerous.
The safest thing I've done today.
The safest thing I've done today. Angelina shot back. Their eyes met. An Irish fiddle played Galway Girl. He bought her a second cocktail. She spoke about Malevich. He spoke about the beauty of future's curves. Laughter, then sudden silence between them, and the question, do you dance?
Do you dance?
That night in O'Donoghue's, time stood still. David forgot about charts, Angelina about palettes. He found in her the light missing from his ordered world. She found in him the support she never knew she needed in a foreign city. Within a year, their chance encounter grew into something neither of them had planned for, but both desperately needed. At first, it was clumsy. Angelina's world was still student exhibitions, half-finished canvases, and ramen noodles at midnight. David's world was 12-hour workdays, Bloomberg terminals, and the pressure of proving himself in a cutthroat office. She would wait for him with a sketchbook in a coffee shop near Canary Wharf, her drawings littered with the faces of strangers, until he emerged from the glass towers with tired eyes. Sometimes he would be too exhausted to talk. She would simply rest her head on his shoulder during the tube ride home. There were bright days, too. On weekends, they wandered through Tate Modern, arguing over Rothko versus Hockney, or took long walks in Hampstead Heath, where David admitted he had never noticed how light falls differently on the grass at dusk. Angelina teased him, "You need more colors in your life. And you need a spreadsheet to manage yours." They laughed.
But London was not always kind. There were fights over the rent for her tiny room, over David forgetting her critique session because of a late meeting, or Angelina's jealousy when a coworker sent David messages at 2 a.m. Once she stormed out into the rain without her coat. She found her an hour later, drenched, sitting on a bench in Russell Square, crying about being too foreign, too lost. He wrapped his jacket around her shoulders and whispered,
"Then we'll be lost together."
Slowly, their lives began to blend. David learned how to live among paint tubes and canvases stacked against the wall. Angelina learned to respect the silence of his late-night calculations. They cooked together, burned pasta once, perfected borscht on the second try, laughed over his failed attempt at blini. Yet in between these ordinary joys, shadows began to creep in. The first time at O'Donoghue's, their ritual corner table shook as if someone had kicked it, yet no one was near. Her cocktail glass trembled, then cracked in her hand with a sharp sound, cutting her palm. The bartender swore it was a manufacturing defect, but Angelina couldn't shake the chill. Another night, they were eating late at home when the chandelier above the table groaned and suddenly crashed to the floor, scattering shards across their plates. David laughed nervously, "Old wiring, I'll fix it tomorrow." But Angelina sat frozen, eyes fixed on the swinging chain, pale as if she had seen an omen. Dreams began to trouble her too. She would wake gasping, insisting she heard someone whisper her name in Russian just before the room went silent. At times, mirrors seemed to catch her reflection a fraction late, as though she were moving separately from her body. Still, they tried to push the unease aside. That summer, they scraped together savings for a week in Barcelona. Days were spent under the sun at Barceloneta, evenings in Gaudi's dreamlike architecture. They argued over directions, got lost in the Gothic quarter, and ended the night with cheap sangria and a kiss under a cathedral. Yet even there, a black cat followed them for 3 nights straight, waiting outside their hostel door. Angelina joked it was her Spanish stalker, but her eyes betrayed unease. There were quieter milestones. Angelina selling her first painting at a student exhibition, David getting a promotion he thought was impossible. When she cried after hanging up on a cold phone call from her mother in Moscow, he stayed up all night, listening. When he had a panic attack before a major presentation, she sketched his portrait, placed it in his briefcase, and wrote, You're more than numbers." But then, one autumn evening, as golden leaves swirled down Gower Street, they heard church bells tolling. Not unusual in London, except it was midnight, and the bells were from a church long abandoned. Angelina froze, gripping David's hand. "Did you hear that?"
Did you hear that?
She whispered. He nodded, unsettled.
By the time the leaves turned fully golden again, they had already endured storms big and small. Their love was imperfect, messy, full of laughter and shouting matches, silent treatments and passionate reconciliations, but it was alive. And every 14th day, they returned to O'Donoghue's. Same cocktails, same music, same corner table, not as a ritual of nostalgia, but as a reminder. That night was not chance. It was the beginning of their fragile, stubborn decision to hold on to each other, no matter what London, life, or their own fears threw at them. What they did not know was that fate was already walking beside them, invisible, patient, waiting. They stepped out into the London night. Rain streamed down neon signs in Soho, turning the puddles into restless mirrors of red and blue. Angelina laughed softly, pressing against David under his jacket.
Do you remember our first storm here?
She whispered, her breath warm against his ear. He pulled her closer by the waist. 12 minutes on foot, through the narrow lane of Cecil Court, until home. That was all.
Wallets,
Then-
phones, now!
Phones, now! A rasping voice cracked the night. David's instincts flared. He shoved Angelina behind him.
Run!
He barked.
He lunged at the masked figure. A fist cracked against bone, the mask sliding off to reveal hollow eyes. They grappled savagely, slamming against the window of an antique bookshop. David was stronger. He had him. Then a flash. Steel catching the glow of a street lamp. A swift, merciless thrust. The blade sank into David's abdomen. The air left him in a guttural gasp. He collapsed to his knees.
Angel!
Angel! The attacker vanished into the labyrinth of alleys. 7 seconds, and he was gone, leaving only echoes and rain. David dragged himself toward her. But when his eyes found her, the world shattered. Angelina's body lay sprawled on the slick pavement. A crimson line across her throat spilled into the gutter, rain diluting it into rivers of fading red. Her gaze was open, frozen in shock. He pressed trembling hands to her wound, then to his own. Blood mingled on his palms, futile, hopeless. Her pulse flickered, then faded against his wrist. Her soul tore free. No more pain, no more cold. She rose above the chaos, the flashing ambulance lights, the wail of sirens, David writhing, still calling her name. For a moment, she felt weightless, ready to be carried into some endless light. But there was no light. Instead, she awoke into a space between. It was as if she stood before an immense wall of mirrored glass. On the other side, the world receded, her body beneath a black shroud. David lifted onto a stretcher, blood soaking his shirt.
No! I have to be with him!
She screamed, hurling herself against the invisible barrier. It did not yield. The voices of higher powers whispered, not with words, but with finality. Your path is upward. 14 days she drifted, watching, listening. She saw David fight in the ICU, tubes threading into his arms. She heard her mother in Moscow sobbing into the receiver.
My little angel.
Powerless, she begged the void. Let me
go back.
Just to him.
Just to him.
Please.
Please.
Only the cold wind of eternity replied. And then, on the 15th day, David rose. He healed. He dressed once more in his pressed suit, returned to his sterile towers of numbers and screens. He locked their flat in Shoreditch, leaving her sketches untouched on the walls. He chose life. And Angelina remained behind the glass, trembling, her soul breaking with a realization more painful than the knife itself. He would live, but without her. And in that grief, in that burning refusal to let go, something began to stir inside her. The thread between worlds tightened, twisted. Her love turned desperate, her longing curdled into hunger. She would not ascend. She would not release him. And so she remained, not spirit, not flesh, a Dybbuk in the making.